By October 3rd, people were moving into the brand new houses. General Williams was walking into the city of Spokane with his army of 2,000. 1,000 miles to the south, John was fulfilling the general's request to contact the Marine Corps. John and Peter were dressed in Marine Corps camouflage. They were in one of the Humvees that had been taken from the mercenaries squatting on the reservation land. The Humvee had flags mounted in the front corners, denoting the President of the U.S. The two had materialized just inside the gate to the command regiment for the Marine Corps Commandant. When they pulled up to the command tent, the two sentries looked at each other. John handed one of the men a proclamation stating clearly that he was the newly appointed President of the new United States and that the Marine Corps was part of the military of that government. The man took the document and showed the second man. The second man looked at the document and motioned for the first man to move inside with it. John looked to the man left standing at the ready. "Marine, since when have we stopped saluting the flag of the U.S. President?" John asked. "Sorry, sir. This is an unexpected pleasure, sir." The man came to attention and saluted smartly. John was saluted back. "Stand easy, Marine. Did you do your boot camp at the Marine Corps Recruiting Depot in San Diego?" "Yes, sir. Me too. 1967 to 1969. John shared. "Corporal, did your family survive?" "Yes, sir. Although they are still living in temporary housing in Phoenix. We'll have to correct that. We just had our first people move into permanent housing on Saturday in Omak, Washington. We hope to have 1,000 families in permanent housing by Christmas." John could see the smile form on the young Marine's face. He could read the young man's mind. He was believing that everything was going to be okay. They heard a shot from inside the command tent. "Stay close to Captain Adams." John moved to the door. As he opened it, he was faced with two men firing their pistols at him. He reflected the rounds back, killing both men. The guard who'd entered was down. John took a few minutes and brought the young Marine back to life. He found a case of water bottles and handed him two. "Stay down, drink these." John picked up the two pistols, 9mm, no military markings. He handed the guns to the young Marine, then proceeded to the inner door. "Who in the fuck are you?" A man in camouflage with 4 stars on his collar shouted. "You can't come in here. I'm the President of the new United States." John looked to the desk, spotting his proclamation. "But you already know that." John heard someone laughing. He spotted the small lens of a camera and looked at it and winked. John heard, "Can you hear me?" John looked at the lens and winked again. The man with the 4 stars was going on about who he was and that he was the deputy commandant. John started laughing at the blatant lie. "Mr. Treese, I'm coming to get you. You have committed crimes upon humanity under both the new and old United States. You tried to murder me and my family on a handful of occasions." John heard the voice of the young man. "Treese is ordering the imposter to shoot you." A shot rang out. The man with the 4 stars looked at his chest as the red coloring spread. His last act was to look at John. His eyes closed. His head hit the desk hard. John looked into the lens. "Where are you?" "Across the street in 3 buildings to the south. I'm barricaded in here, sir. We will be there in a few minutes." John got up and removed the 4-star rankings from the collar of the imposter. "Sorry, mister, I didn't even learn your name." John looked up and there was the second guard drinking water at the door. John handed him the third 9mm. "Let's go see how Captain Adams is doing." "Yes, sir." "Are you the new president, sir?" the young man asked. "Yes." "Sir, I'm Lance Corporal Corey Ledger. I would like to volunteer to be part of your guard unit. We will talk with the commandant." John smiled as he opened the door. Another cousin, maybe? There before them were more mercenaries quickly moving into position in front of the command tent. John quickly touched source and found Peter had indeed taken over 1,000 mercenaries to God. The men John was facing had been camped just outside of the command regiment's perimeter. "Hang on, Corey." In a blink, they were on the scaffold on the west side of the sun. "Mr. President?" Peter was giving John a smart salute. Over and over, the mercenaries were dropping their guns, the railing was opening, and the individuals were moving toward the sun until they exploded. John saluted back. "Good to see you again, Captain Adams." The 2 guards also saluted, and Peter and John returned their salutes as well. "Sir, what is that?" Corey Ledger asked. For all our definitions, that is hell. What we understand is the energy that makes us an aspect of God will be stuck in the fiery ball until the end of time. The individual soul tree uses this to trim the negativity from the tree for the tree to bear fruit. God is not making this judgment. It is being done at the soul level. We are not making judgments. If the soul tree chooses to send the individuals back, then they would be standing here with us. That is why we stay and watch until the end. John shared, the mercenaries in Washington state, very few of them went into theirs. As John watched the last one, God bless them, may they be forgiven. They returned to the commandant's tent. John had the feeling that the real commandant was strapped to a bed with a charge under it, ready to go off by a cell phone call. John sent out an electrical pulse. He hoped it would interfere with Wi-Fi transmissions. He'd tried doing that before. John turned to the corporal. Sound the alarm. Get everybody out of here. Captain Adams, you take charge. Yes, sir, Mr. President, Peter responded. Lance Corporal Ledger, you're with me. John took off at a double time towards the building across the street and 3 doors down. They arrived at an old farmhouse. It looked odd with big command tents all around it. John wondered where everybody was. He got the sense everybody in the higher ranks had been murdered. John and Lance Corporal Corey faced the door. John used his telekinetic ability in alignment with his kick. He was more than amazed when the whole door and frame fell in. The only time he had ever seen that was in the movie The Money Pit. John and the Lance Corporal Corey entered the house. There was a man on a cot with a box under him. John grabbed the box and took it outside and pushed it towards the sun. It exploded hundreds of feet up. John moved back into the house and kneeled next to the man on the cot. He heard a cell phone vibrate. John expanded his mental shield just as a claymore exploded in the closet. John took the general, Lance Corporal Corey, and the man who'd been operating the video in the commandant's office. He moved everyone to the street. As he did that, the whole house exploded. He looked at the pile of smoldering rubble. His first thought was of 9/11, and he spoke aloud. Yes, Mr. Treese, I'm coming for you. Who are you? The man on the ground asked in a very weak voice. I hope to be your new boss. I'm John Taylor, President of the 11 Western United States, British Columbia, Alaska, and Hawaii. John shared. What are you? The general demanded. I'm the comforter that John the Beloved talked about in the Bible. John shared. Are you military? The man asked. Vietnam vet, United States Marine Corps, from 1967 to 1969. John shared. When did the Marine Corps start? The man asked. November 10th, 1775, created by the Continental Congress to help protect our merchant ships from being raided by the British. John answered and then asked one back at the general, what war did the Marine Corps play little or no part in and why? Civil War. The officers were primarily from the South and the enlisted were primarily from the North. All of the officers and enlisted units were reassigned and there were no recognized Marine Corps units involved in that war, the general shared. John handed him his rankings. The general looked at his 4 stars and made a decision. Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Robert Nell. I've got to find out what in the hell happened here. Give me a hand up, please, sir. As the general got to his feet, a man ran up. Sir, we found the officers. They've been shot. The general looked out over his command. He looked to his right at Peter. Who are you? Captain Peter Adams. I'm the president's aide. Peter shared while saluting the general. Captain Adams, I'm leaving you in charge here. Lock the base down and find out what in the hell happened here. I'm taking your place with the president. The general saluted and turned and followed at a run in the direction that John had taken. John sent a message to Jenny. Help, I need healers, all of them. Meet you at God. John turned and there was the general. I heard your prayer. You are calling for help. Can you do anything? General Nell asked. I get a yes, John responded. Can I go with you? General Nell asked. Yes, John answered. In a blink, they were at the Christports. What is this? The general asked. General Nell, meet God, John shared. In another blink, Jenny, Virginia, and 20 others were kneeling. The general watched as his military family started very slowly to come back to life. The general had tears running down his cheeks. First, there was one, then another sitting up, with their eyes opened, still in a bit of shock. "General, we need to hydrate them. 2 bottles each and more if you or they sense the need." John shared, "Yes, sir." The general turned and saw a half-dozen cases of water. He tore into the top case and grabbed a half-dozen bottles. When everybody had a bottle or two, the general stopped and said, "Thank you, God." "You're welcome, Robert," God responded. The general was drinking some water when a little girl came up to him. "General Nell, will you come with me, please?" "I'm here with President John Taylor," the general replied. "I know he's going to be my daddy someday. I'm Gaia, and you are going to be an important person to help me bring in the 1,000 years of peace. We need to talk. Come with me." The general was seen sitting in one of the Christ ports with Gaia sitting in his lap. His eyes and mouth were wide open. His immortality gene had been turned on, and he would become younger. Gaia told him there was a mate out there who would someday be standing in front of him. He was told his core would need to be mobile. They would be all over the world, and their assignments would last up to a week or two. Gaia kissed him and placed an appropriate hat on the general's head. "Go address your family, General." The general stood. "Thank you, God. Thank you, Gaia." He moved in the direction of his officers. The stack of water was almost all gone, down to one case unopened with the part of a second sitting on top. "Attention," one of his officers announced. "At ease, let's not do that here. John, can we come back here again?" the general asked. "Yes, Peter is working on that now." John turned and pointed to a mob of thousands. "Is that my command?" The general knew it was. "Yes, it is," John shared. "Can we go visit?" the general asked. When he got a big smile and a nod from John, he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the last time I looked at our troops, they looked like they had just lost their brother and sister, mom and dad. They love and respect you so very much. Captain Adams has been promoted several times, and I know he is just a young man, but he has set a tradition of bringing everybody home. That is going to be heard again and again. From now on, we are going to learn how to bring everybody home alive. Let's go visit our Marines." John was holding on to Gaia. Gaia held out her hand to hug the general, and before he knew it, Gaia and John had the general wrapped up in a hug. "Thank you." The general turned and made his way towards his troops. It was obvious that he was trying to hide the tears in his eyes. "We've done good today, Daddy." Gaia was hugging John's neck. "We've done well today, Gaia." John smiled down at her. "Not good?" Gaia looked at John with a question on her face. "Hi, you two. What are you two talking about?" Jenny asked. "We've done well today," Gaia giggled. Later, when Peter had transported all the Marine Corps Command Regiment back to their temporary home, things had quieted down. The general had eaten with his men and women. He had a dais with a podium moved to the one side of the chow hall. He had given his understanding of what the Corps would become. Captain Peter Adams had brought down 200 volunteers, including his wife Patty from Omak. They were sitting in the mess hall with the command regiment personnel. Peter and Patty had given several demonstrations of their abilities in stopping things. The general had retired to his tent. He had used the John and was sitting in his chair reading the Bible. He doubted that what he had experienced was real. He jumped up to stand in front of his shaving mirror. There were 3 little bitty kisses. He thought, "Gaia?" "Yes, General." He heard a little girl's voice. "You can hear my thoughts?" the general asked. "You're on my earth," Gaia responded. "Of course I can." "Thank you, Gaia." The general's doubts were gone. "You're welcome, General," Gaia responded. The next day in Texas, John used his ability to move around the base Mr. Treese used. He finally decided to go knock on the door. He brought with him the same Humvee that he and Peter used yesterday. He drove up to the main gate and was waved in. Well, so much for a surprise, John thought. He had estimated there were only about 2,000 men on the base. He was pretty sure the real assistant commandant was here. General Helen said 6 F-35 pilots were missing too. He parked in front of what looked like a typical command tent. John's intuition gave him the impression that this was it. He was about to get out of the Jeep when he realized Treese was not here yet. He gathered up all the mercenaries and took them to the west side of the sun. As John was standing there, leaning on the railing, a young lady came up to him. She was dressed in fatigues and had a cap on with a sergeant's insignia on it. "Who are you?" the sergeant asked. "I'm John Taylor." John looked at her. And you are? I'm Sergeant Sarah Lopez. Sarah was afraid of the goings-on. Can you tell me what's happening? This is Judgment Day. Each of our souls is determining if we are positive or negative. If we are negative, then we may be trimmed from the soul tree. All plants and trees need to be trimmed from time to time to allow new growth and to produce flowers and fruit. Our souls are no different. I don't want to go there, Sarah stated. John had been watching the last of the mercenaries float to the sun and explode. Looks like there are over 100 still here. They did a lot of brainwashing, blackmailing, and just plain threatening to all of us, Sarah shared. Why are you here? John asked. Got out of the service and couldn't find a job. They advertised we would go back to Iraq and finish it. Sarah answered, my friends recommended it. Your friends here? John already knew the answer. No, they're somewhere up in Washington, eating buffaloes, Sarah informed. John laughed. Let's go visit God. John had them there before anyone could say anything. Daddy! Gaia came running up to John and jumped into his open arms. Yup, John responded when he got hit. Hi, Pumpkin. Your daughter? Sarah asked. Gaia is my future daughter, and she brings in the 1,000 years of peace, John shared. Daddy, the Commandant is thinking of adding kisses to the dress code for the Marine Corps. Well, kiss me and then kiss Sarah and take her over to God. I want her to look like a first lieutenant in the Marine Corps. John put Gaia down and she grabbed Sarah's hand and took her to touch God. Everybody listen up. This is our Father. This is where our soul comes from. You can touch God and ask him anything. I need to leave and go face Mr. Treese. I will be back in an hour or so. Everyone seemed to be at home. John wondered why, and then he remembered the 100th monkey effect. It was a hypothetical phenomenon that came from a study in the 1950s in Japan. When a group of monkeys learned to do something, eventually these behaviors spread through the younger generation of monkeys through observation and repetition. Sarah Lopez approached him hanging onto Gaia. You did good, daughter. Not well, but good, Gaia asked. Honey, when you learn good well in school, you come and teach your daddy. It has been way too many years, okay? John kneeled and hugged and kissed Gaia goodbye. Love you, Daddy. Go do good, Gaia laughed. We will, Lieutenant Lopez. You're with me, John shared. The two were sitting in the Humvee watching the landing pad behind the command building. Lieutenant, when does Treese normally show up? John asked. Between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock, sir. There will be 2 black helicopters coming from that direction. She pointed straight out the windshield. John looked at 8:05 on the clock. Oops, we are on mountain time. What time is it? 9:05, sir. Sarah watched as John looked at his phone again. Sir, God showed me a vision of my husband. I didn't know you were married. John looked at Sarah. I'm not. God showed me my future husband's. Sarah was in thought. I didn't think I would ever get married. I think you know him. What does he look like? John asked. Hard to describe, but it was like he was introducing me to his daughter. I think her name was Will, or Willie, or something like that. Sarah shared. John laughed. Her name is Willa, and she is head over heels in love with my adopted son, Tony. She is the granddaughter of 2 chiefs. Everybody in the county knows those two are meant for each other. Sir, you surprise me. I can feel the pride in your voice when you talk about your son. Sarah laughed. We both believed the plan was for me to show up to be his dad at this time. He has 6 brothers and sisters. Jenny and I love those kids and are having the best time of our lives at home. John smiled. It would be nice if I could end up someplace where I could use my business management degree, Sarah commented. John looked at her and started laughing again. We're going to have to be careful not to work you to the bone. We have great need of you. John shared. Here they come. Stay behind me, Lieutenant. The 2 helicopters got to within 300 yards, and the one on the right fired a rocket. Sarah was going to scream when she realized the rocket was veering upward. It then made a complete circle just before it exploded, destroying the right helicopter. Sarah realized a half-dozen people were sitting over towards the left. They had just shown up, like magic. The damaged helicopter exploded, sending out a ball of flame. When the helicopter that ex-President Treese was within 100 yards, it opened fire with its machine guns. John simply returned the rounds at the windshield at about twice muzzle velocity, making little spider marks all over the bullet-resistant windshield. When Treese could no longer see, the firing stopped. At that moment, John sent a telekinetic pulse and the windshield shattered. John and Sarah could both see Treese screaming and motioning up. John reached out as though he was capturing a fly and simply pulled it in. Even with the maximum lift, the helicopter landed in its normal spot. John and Sarah could both see the pilot pointing to John when talking to Treese. The side door opened and a man in a suit came out. He helped several women out of the helicopter. Mrs. Treese had her head down as she cleared the slowing blades and approached John and Sarah. She was followed by all but the pilot and her husband. They sat there discussing what could be done to kill John. The pilot had not killed anyone since Iraq. He was interacting with Treese, but was just going through the motions, as one might talk with someone who is about to be executed. His money was all on this President John Taylor that just blew out his bullet-resistant windshield without killing anybody. President Taylor, I am so very happy to finally meet you. I'm Leslie Madison Treese. Madam First Lady. John took her hand and bowed. Save that for your wife, Mrs. Treese stated. She's happy, but she's also a bit overwhelmed by it all, John laughed. Mr. President, are there any other presidents on your family tree? Mrs. Treese asked. James Madison and Zachary Taylor. They are both second cousins, 4 times removed. John shared, for me, it's also James Madison. That's the first time I've been able to share that without feeling threatened that my life would be ended. Nice to meet another family member. Mrs. Treese looked to John and then turned towards her husband. I understand you can take people to God. Can we go? Mrs. Treese asked. We may have to make a side trip. John shared, also looking at Mr. Treese. Mrs. Treese looked back to John. To the west side of the sun. I'm ready. Let's go. So be it. John took everybody on the base who hadn't been before. He even found the assistant commandant and missing F-35 pilots. They watched as first one of the security people went through the railing, then the pilot of the helicopter who had fired the rocket at John and Sarah, then Mr. Treese. When he exploded, Leslie put her hand over her heart. I didn't think I had any love for him left in me. Hard to create children with another without feeling something. Ready to go see God? John asked. Yes, sir, I am. Leslie smiled, even though she had a tear in her eye. Everyone, take a deep breath, John advised. When Leslie Treese opened her eyes, she exclaimed, Oh my, you are for real, John Taylor. As usual, Gaia jumped into John's arms. John gave Gaia a great big hug and introduced her to Mrs. Treese. Gaia, oh my, please call me Leslie, Leslie Madison. I only plan on using Treese when it may be of some benefit to our new country. General Howell, President Taylor, and Ms. Madison, you 3 need to sit down and talk. The Marines need to move to Amarillo, Texas. There are 1,023 acres there, and it has a really big airport. Gaia shared. John took the General and Ms. Madison over to the Christports, and the 3 sat with their heads together. When she came back, Leslie approached John with a bold look on her face. John, I want to be appointed as your governor of the territories of the Central 12 states. That would run from Texas north to Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, south and North Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, Wisconsin, and Illinois. How long and what do you want from me? John asked. I want my country back together again, damn it. It's what I can offer you, Mr. President. I know all the little and big secrets since before 9/11. I believe you have a significant amount of gold and silver? Leslie asked. I purchased 20 tons of gold and 50 tons of silver before the earth changes to add to what you know about. John shared, we also have another 4 tons of gold in the bank my family owns. I will tell you where at least 10,000 tons of gold is. There's probably more, but I don't know how much, but I do know where it is. Leslie smiled. Who has it? It's nobody's gold. It's our gold, and the private sector has been stealing it from our government and other governments since the heist by the New York bankers sent there by the Tsar of Russia for the League of Nations in the early 1900s. The New York bankers then had the Tsar and his family killed. The gold that was under the Trade Center, the nation's gold that was in Fort Knox, it's all together in the underground city under the Denver airport. You are the only man alive that can walk in there and transport it out of there. You're the only man who has a chance of hanging on to it for the benefit of mankind, Leslie shared. How do you know all this? General Howell asked. Leslie giggled. In 2000, Tree set up an elaborate office at home, complete with a mini mainframe or server or whatever. He even had my computer plugged into it. The young man who set it up knew one of my daughters and was trying to get in good with the mom of a love interest. Leslie laughed. He told me how to get into the secure part of the system. You are the first ones that I've ever shared this with. My acting classes in college have come in very handy. It isn't what do I know, it's I know everything. We'll need to take many more to visit the west side of the sun. How do I learn how to do that? The first step is right here, right now. John looked to General Howell and Leslie. You guys are less than a few months behind me. By being here, your eyes open to the possibilities, John shared. John, do you know who runs the eastern United States? The general asked. John listened for the answer. John Treese, the little brother. The Treese family knew it was coming. We have been ready to move since 2012, Leslie shared. Maybe that was why it was postponed. John shared.